Hello, friends, and welcome to the Doing What Matters podcast. I'm your host, Teresa McCloy, and we are going to do the next 4 episodes just a little bit differently. As I said last week on the podcast, I want to walk through all 4 components of kind of our signature framework in the work that we do with others. So we do that a couple of different ways. We walk with clients individually through creating a modern day rule of life. And then we certify other people in the helping professions, both coaches and counselors, therapists, spiritual directors, all kinds of people to use this content in the work that they are doing. So we're going to switch it up a little bit over the next 4 weeks. And I'm actually going to be talking to Erica Vinson, my co-host here on the podcast. And we're going to get the process through her perspective and her lens. And the reason I wanted to do this is because Erica's actually been a part of so much of the development and probably over the years has done more coaching with the process than anyone other than myself. And she just has a unique perspective. And here on the Doing What Matters podcast, we really embrace this holistic approach to living that's rooted in this place of rest, not rush. And the foundation of that for both Erica and I is these components of the process, what we call the real life process. So I'm just going to dive in. We're going to go right to it with our very first component in these 4 steps. If you are listening in and you want to back up to last week's episode, I walked through what these 4 key components are. And Erica, welcome in. And let's just dive into this very first component.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about how we actually live this out.
So, the very first component that we have, just to keep it simple, is called real life being. And this component really comes around this discovery of your real self. So, as you live this out in your own life and you have walked so many clients, whether they're private clients or coaches that you have coached to use the content, what do you see in this real life being side where we walk through needs and values and talents, gifts, and abilities and creating a mission statement and looking at the areas of focus in someone's life? Just give me a little bit of insight from all your years of experience with this particular part.
I would say, first of all, that the real life being component is probably the most surprising and enlightening for almost every client I've worked with. I think many clients come and they want to talk about action. A lot of clients come and they want to talk about time, or they may know that there are rhythms and they really aren't resting and they're exhausted. So they're living. Those other 3 components are out of balance or out of harmony. And yet there is this foundational piece of being that really it's a joy to bring alongside the doing that clients are aware of already. And so this piece for me is really something that over and over, I'm just astounded at how it helps to move clients forward when they can really be honest about their being.
I love what you say there because so many times for both of us, whether we start to work with a coach who wants to use this content in the work they're doing and they're coming through our certification program, or we're working with our private clients, they are very aware of the doing side of things. They're very aware of, I can't fit it all on my calendar, or I know I need to structure my goals, which we don't use that language, but oftentimes they do. I need better goals. I need to write them down differently. I need to break them up. Yeah, we get into all that. But this very first component, I agree with you, surprises clients that if I would just connect to my real self, what do I deeply desire? How am I uniquely wired? What have you experienced when our clients walk through that particular piece?
The first word that comes to mind is freedom. It gives clients the ability to name things that they may be experiencing or longing for, that they don't even know why things feel like they're overwhelmed or life is out of control, whatever it is. But once they're able to put their finger on it and say, right now, I need clarity and I am just not experiencing that in any portion of my life, it gives them a groundedness to go, okay, now that I brought that into the light, what are we going to do about it?
That is so good. You just see even a physical shift. If we're on a Zoom call with somebody, you can almost see a physical light bulb go off above their head or just their body shifts as they just find, oh, wow, I do have a deep need for order or peace or comfort. Got the honor to work with a whole team yesterday for a couple of hours and really do something neat I've been doing with teams is taking the whole team's needs and values and saying, as a team, what are our top needs as we come together and we work together? So that's one of our favorite tools. In fact, we will link in the show notes. We have a way for you to take that full assessment. If you would love to dive into your needs and values and you're listening in, you can take that assessment and you can actually even get on a call with Erica or myself and walk through and review that. And it's very unique to us. I've never seen anybody else do it in the way that we do it. As you think more about this first component, we walk with clients. Another thing that we really work on here is their talents, their gifts, and their abilities. What do you see with people when they're in that section of this work?
Whether it's in the business world or the spiritual world, I mean, in the spiritual world, it's that spiritual gifts piece. So I think there's a connection for anyone. In the business place, it might be strengths that you've noticed that others have named in you. And so some of it is just our natural gifting and the way we're wired. Some of it is cultivated and some of it is actually drawn out of us. Those talents, gifts, abilities, I think just getting them inked down, there's something about that. Once we can see them, you talk about this often, Teresa, with our coaching network, but on our best day, it's easy for us to name those things, to look at them. And we have specific even ways of walking our coaches through how do we look at those three things and how are they different? On our days that are the hardest, it's a place for us to remember and go
Mhm.
back and go, okay, this is true about me. And how am I actually embracing that? Or how do I want to steward that or stretch myself? Because that's not showing up in how I am being or doing in the world.
That idea that we write it down, there's a reason why we write it down because this is going to be a living, breathing document that we walk you through creating when someone goes through the process so that you can reference it later and go, yes, this is true about me. I have this gift. This is in me. I have this talent, this ability. I've maybe gone to school for years even to learn this ability. So why am I doubting it? So impactful for a client to actually do an inventory of their life at that stage and start to, as you say, remember. Then we move on down in this particular component and we have clients create a real life statement, their mission statement, and come to that place. And then we look at something that for you and I think has been huge in our own lives as we created this process. We call them areas of focus. Say more about areas of focus and what that is for clients as you've experienced, even the clarity around that and how we then create these statements around all of those areas.
Areas of focus really tie so closely to values. So the work is connected. And when we look at values and that external piece of how we're showing up in the world and what's important to us, then we can start to go, okay, what are these big areas with whatever your background is, you might know them as big rocks. If our listeners even have been following you for very long, you have the pickle jar and putting the pickles in the jar. And so whatever you call them, containers, buckets, these are the spaces in your life that really matter. And I think this is where often we can get really compartmentalized. And I remember doing my real life view, even in sitting with you and another one of our teammates one time. And I had a lot of these personal things, but I was missing the professional area, which was a huge part of my life. And so adding that and naming it, whether it's professional or business, however you want to call it, the work that you do, it's important. And so naming those areas of focus and then actually starting to put some language toward what do I really want and envision these areas to look like so that I can start to claim a few things and get specific about them. It allows us then to go, how am I going to create some action to make this happen?
Just to give some examples, Erica, you mentioned the professional. It might be my own self care, my health. It might be about relationships, like my spouse matters, my kids matter, my financial things matter. What we're trying to do is just get clarity on the 5 to 7 things that are important, that matter in your life, and you want to pay attention to, because where we get distracted is everything matters. And when you actually name and write down, nope, these are the big things right now in this season, we have found, you and I both, I think, most of that doesn't change much over time. The growth that you're doing, that statement that we write, we call it an I am statement, where you're looking out a year or two from now and saying, what do I want that area to be in my life? What do I want my relationship to be with my extended family over the next year or two? I want to see them once a month. I want to go on vacation with them once a year. For some of you, you're like, no way. But for others of you, I'd love to do that. Okay. And we'll talk about on the next episode, the next component then of when I write that statement. Now, how am I going to get from A to Z? How am I going to get there and make that a reality in my life? But first, we have to name those areas and really say, I can't do it all. I can't have a million things that I'm trying to do. I can't have buckets lined up for miles to come of all of this is important. All of this in this season, this is important. Again, that written clarity, I think,
Mhm.
is so helpful to people to take that time.
It really provides a release because when we even acknowledge that, yes, there could be all of these different things, the neat part that happens is once we start to put them, we love the mind map tool, or you just put a circle in the center, areas of focus, and then start to map out like, what are those things that are coming? It allows the freedom then to have the connections be made too and go, oh, actually, this area actually is a part of this. We have extended family or friends, adventure, travel, hobbies. I have a client who just defined an area as creative play. Just name like I'm missing play from my life. And so how is that important in the work that I do? So it shows us, yeah, a snapshot.
We write it, it does let us see it in a different way. Taking pen to paper, we were talking about this in our practice community. And Lindsay and I were talking about it on our sister podcast, the Real Life Practice podcast, because we're doing a series on journaling. And so I think when I was actually even creating this process, the idea that I wrote it down and it went out of my brain onto paper, then I could look at it on the paper and reconnect dots, as you said earlier, remember goes back into my brain a different way. And so you
Yeah.
just see that cycle. Yes, we can type these things out. Yes, we can do it digitally. We even have that ability through some of our content to do it digitally. But I love the old fashioned way of just writing it out. So
Yeah.
this component, this very first one, real life being, is the foundation of, we don't start with the doing. We start with that foundational bottom of the triangle, as I show that graph inside of our content material of knowing our real self well. So, Erica, thanks for walking us through it. One of the things when Erica and I get that privilege to work with clients is oftentimes we'll walk away from a call and go, that was just such joy for me to see that client have that aha moment. Those are extraordinary moments for us many times as we get to walk alongside of others. And just want to remind you of that, that every day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. Maybe today it comes in a conversation where you get to walk alongside with someone else and help them discover things such as being in touch with that being side of self. So we want to remind you too, you can connect with us in our free community at thereallifeprocess.com. Just click up on that community tab, connect with Erica, connect with myself, others on our team. Or you can also go inside the show notes. I mentioned our needs and values assessment. You can click there and find that assessment if you would like to engage with that and even walk through with Erica the results of that. We would love to come alongside you in that way. But Erica, thanks for joining me. And we will see you all next week on the Doing What Matters podcast.